Have you ever had one of those moments where you realize your wife and her family are about 1,000 times smarter and more well-educated than you and your family? One of those revelations. I had one after my first son was born. I painted this dinosaur mural. So this dinosaur theme ended up developing where everyone bought him dinosaur bibs and dinosaur shirts. Well, I should say my wife's family, Jessica's family, they all bought him dinosaurs. They all went to University of Michigan and are science majors. My family, which is 5 generations of Ohio State communication majors, they buy him dragons and they think it's a dinosaur. This is a gift from my mother-in-law. This is a gift from my dad. That has wings and fire coming out of its mouth. He called that a Bair-Flannery. My brother bought him one last week. That's a fucking walrus that he thought was a dinosaur. That's not even extinct yet. But sometimes the differences work out in my favor. Like, my family is a lot more fun to party with. A lot more fun. Yeah. I remember going to one of Jessica's weddings. They didn't like the wedding DJ. You want to know how they voiced their disapproval of the wedding DJ? They wrote a limerick about the event, and then they performed this limerick. Like, that's how smart they are. They know these ancient rhyme schemes. Comparatively, my family was once so drunk at a wedding on the east side of Cleveland, the Italian restaurant we were at cut us off as a family. Do you want to know what my godfather did as his sign of a protest? He took a shit in the urinal. I just go walking in there, I see my godfather, the man who introduced me to the Catholic Church, with his pants around the ankles going, Sean, they cut us off. But I'm getting them back. And the most amazing thing is, he wanted to drive home that night. If I can quickly impersonate the end of every Irish Catholic wedding I've ever been to, one of my cousins or friends, drunk out of their mind, going, I'm driving, man. Another friend, her cousin, going, no, you're not. I'm driving, man. Not on my watch. I'm gonna drive. Then I'm following you. Greatest plan in the world. The guy who had 2 less shots is gonna follow in a separate vehicle, eyeballing his decisions. That would only make sense to 2 other drunk people. Like, never let that happen. I had 2 cousins that actually tried to do that. The guy in the lead car was so drunk, forgot his brother was following him, thought it was a cop, tried to lose him. And they collided with each other at 45 miles an hour. That's how it actually ends when you try that. Luckily, my Uncle Pete came in and he shut down the whole thing. And he drove them home. I don't know if my Uncle Pete was any more qualified to be driving that night. He never gets a ticket in Cleveland, Ohio. If he's ever pulled over, he tells the cops he's a priest. It's a very Catholic town, you know, it always works. And I tell that to people now, and they're in disbelief. There's no way that would work. You know, police have access to too much information. Some people even tell me, I have friends that have tried it and it didn't work. But I always ask, the friends that you had that tried it, were they smart enough to wear a priest costume into the DMV? Like my Uncle Pete does. Every 5 years, he puts on a priest costume, goes down to the DMV, and pretty much talks in Latin so he can get this photo and drive like a maniac all over Northeast Ohio. I come from a long line of maniac drivers. This show is about the last 10 times I nearly killed myself by accident. And the first one was driving. I drove a car off a bridge at 70 miles an hour. I drove a car off a bridge at 70 miles an hour, landed, slid down a ravine onto a separate highway without stopping. Like I should have been dead. It was the 77 480 Cloverfield in Cleveland, Ohio. I went off 77 north, down a ravine onto 480 west. And I really should have been dead. This is the Cloverfield here. And this is how a normal person, as we all know, goes to Cleveland. Straight up 77 north. This is how I went to Cleveland. I went off this bridge right here. This is a perspective from 480. You guys, most of you have probably been at this intersection. And I think it was a weird situation for everyone involved because I was actually sober, but I was driving in a blizzard for the first time. And you know how whenever you're driving in a blizzard, you all get in the slow lane, you do like 20 miles an hour, you just follow each other's treads, you know, and everyone's taking their time, they'll get there safe. And the fast lanes are just like virgin, undriven snow, like no one's using the fast lanes. But once, like every 45 minutes or so, some jackass will just motorboat past and spray snow and salt all over everyone. And what do you always say when you're passed by that kind of guy? Yeah. Yeah, you always say, like, that jackass, that asshole, the way he's driving, you always add, I hope he gets in an accident. I hope that SOB gets in an accident. So I always wondered what it looked like from the perspective of those people on 77 North who yell, I hope that SOB gets in an accident. And then I just go off a bridge and disappear at 70 miles an hour. Jesus, Lord, I didn't mean for you to erase him off the face of the earth. I just kind of wanted his rates to go up. And we go off this bridge. We're now sliding down that ravine in between them. And I've always had this thing about me where I'm always calm. Like, no matter what's going on, I never lose my cool. Like, I'm almost weirdly calm. And my passengers, they start screaming in the back seat. At the top of their lungs, they're just screaming. And I turn to them, and I say, I've lost control of the vehicle. I've lost control of the vehicle. That is the most unnecessary update you will ever receive. Yeah, no shit, Bo Duke. We're currently off-roading in an 87 Cavalier. I'm pretty sure you didn't mean to make that 80-mile-an-hour right off a bridge. I was so calm at one point, I haven't even looked in front of me yet, and I go, how's everyone doing back there? Like I'm some sort of trolley bus driver. And they say, no, look, you asshole, we're going to hit another highway. And that's when I see 480. And that's when I realize that we are sliding down a ravine on towards another. I should mention, the previous week, Manny Ramirez hit a grand slam in the bottom of the ninth against the Texas Rangers. We won a game that we were down by 3 leading the ninth, and we drunkenly spray painted Chief Wahoo. This is the actual car I used to drive. So it really was like a Cleveland General Lee coming down. And I don't know what to do. I'm trying to steer, I'm trying to brake, and nothing's working, and I don't know what protocol is in that situation when you're about to land on a separate highway. But I was so calm. What did I decide to do? I put my blinker on. Like, that's gonna make it a valid merge. Like, all right, everyone, buckle up. We're gonna do this one by the numbers, all right? I don't wanna look like an asshole here. And we hit that little gully right before the shoulder, and then once we hit the shoulder, we go airborne. And we are now airborne, about to land on a separate interstate highway. And in that instant, I was pretty sure we were going to die. And it's nothing like they tell you in the movies. In the movies, they say when you're about to die unexpectedly, you see your whole life flash before your eyes. And that's not what actually happens. And I've had a lot of close shaves. That's not what happens. All you really think about is what you're wearing. Especially this time, because I just gotten off the clock at my job at Lady Foot Locker. And I was dressed as a referee. And you think you're gonna have these deep, poignant final words, because you think you're gonna reflect on your whole life. Like, you think you're gonna turn to the person next to you and say something like, I've always loved you, or I've never been to Paris. But what you actually end up saying when it really happens is you say something like, this whistle doesn't even work. And then you just merge with a separate highway, and those are your true final words on Earth. And we did, we merged with a separate highway, and somehow we didn't hit them, and they didn't hit us. And I don't know if any of you have ever been in that awkward situation where you've nearly killed like 14 people, but there's like an awkwardness, a tension that no one knows how to break, and you're just like, woo-hoo! Woo! And I break the awkwardness with, this way's actually quicker. We're gonna swing by the worst of traffic. And I waved to the car behind me like he had just let me in from an intersection. And that's what this show is about. This show is about the reality of what it's like to live every day like it's your last. Because they always tell you that in movies, and friends say that, live like there's no tomorrow. And they always talk about like the great things that'll be like this constant Ferris Bueller's Day Off. They never talk about the day-to-day transactions that happen. They never talk about like what your job history will be like if you are consistently talking to your boss like there's no tomorrow. I've been fired from over 32 jobs. Or what happens to your body and your cars when you live like you don't believe tomorrow is happening. And they also act like it's easy advice to just accept, and I don't think it is. I don't think everyone, to live like there's no tomorrow, you have to be comfortable with a certain level of chaos, I feel. When we made it up to this Cleveland Indians game, I was actually supposed to be the designated driver this night. And they're like, you know what, we'll just drive home. And it's like they said, it's not so much that you drove off a bridge and down a mountain. It was how calm you were as you did it that really freaked us out. And I think the reason I was so calm, as crazy as this was, it wasn't that altogether different than the average ride with my dad growing up. My dad was a social worker for the Catholic diocese. He had 6 kids. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. He used to drive us around in a 67 Datsun. My dad fit 6 kids in that car. But the most amazing feature is the passenger door didn't shut like that. So whenever he hung left, like that door would fly wide open. So like, what's my dad's like 1981 solution to that? He would park me behind him and then tie a rope from the door handle to my ankle, so that every time he hung a left, like the door would go open and my leg would come up and that would bring it back in. And years later, like, we asked him about that, and his explanation was like, well, obviously I would have chicken wired the door shut in a normal situation. But because your mom was always pregnant, she can't be coming in through some kind of window. So I tied Sean to the door. My oldest. And you say that's one of those things that on paper, when you say it now, sounds bad, but you're not putting yourself in the perspective of a kid. Because as a kid, you hate getting in the car. Like you're always going to a destination you don't want to go to. Like you're always going to school or church or some place you don't want to go to, and you hate getting in the car until one day your dad shows up with a rope. and says, son, you got to keep the family in this vehicle. Like, I thought it was good. I would wear my leather jacket in case I popped out and had to Indiana Jones my way back into the car. My dad was just like, as a dad, he was just bad at risk assessment. He was one of those old school Irish Catholic dads that wasn't allowed to babysit his own kids. I don't know if anyone else here had a dad. Like, if my mom ever had to do something, a neighbor's mom would come watch us while my dad is in the house working on random home improvement projects. And I think the best story that sums it up was like the last time he watched us, where we lived in a 2-bedroom house in Willoughby, and my sisters had the 1 bedroom, my folks had the other one, and me and my 3 brothers were in the attic, which we loved, because we would combine all the beds, and we would just wrestle all day long. And because the ceiling was so low, you could get like a ricochet effect where you would hit the bed, then the ceiling, and like gain speed, and we loved it. And my dad's watching us once, and he decides to body slam at full speed from the hallway, and he hits. The force of that propels my brother Brendan up towards a window, and you'd be amazed like how time slows down as a human body travels towards a window. And you can make like every necessary calculation. You can be like, okay, what floor are we on? Second, not good. Is that window open? Yes, it is. Worse. And he goes through it, and now we're all running down, and like, we're trying to figure out if he's okay. Like, my dad's in like a higher level of panic because he's taking his calculations up to the next level, which is, will my wife leave me with all 5 to 6 of my remaining kids? Yes, she will. But there was one very important calculation he forgot to make, which was, at that point in time, do I now drive a 15-foot high van that might be parked under the window? We get down there. Brendan is on top of this van with the screen window around his torso going, let's do it again! We're all like, yeah, window jump, window jump. And my dad's response, which I think is like the perfect Irish Catholic dad response, he goes, I don't know, guys. I don't want to dent the roof of that van. Like, he's perfectly comfortable with his kids going out a 2nd-story window. He just doesn't want to affect the Blue Book value. That's my Uncle Jim in front of the car. A lot of my uncles, my great-uncles, were all born in Ireland, and it's funny, they've now lived in America, many of them for 30, sometimes 40 years. And so I don't know if you've ever met off-the-boat Irish, but they're known for their great storytelling and embarrassing racism. And my uncles think they've become politically correct, but the way they're politically correct is they'll still say like a terrible thing about a given race or culture, but then they immediately follow up with an equally generalized compliment. And they think they're being politically correct. Like, my uncles will say something like, well, Sean, there's your problem. You're seeing a Polak dentist. He doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. That said, Sean, if you ever need any drywall hung, they're the most reliable workers in the world. He's a landlord now in West Chicago. He actually said this to me one time. He goes, Sean, I don't understand why these gays are always having a parade. I don't know if kids should be seeing that. I will say this, Sean, they're cleaner than women. I won't rent to anyone else. Like, they think they're being politically correct when they talk that way. But I'll always be thankful to my uncles for at least one thing. They got me started on cheap beer. My uncles used to drink this beer called Schaefer's. Yeah, you guys remember Schaefer's? In Cleveland, Ohio, in the mid-'90s, you could get a 30-pack of Schaefer's for $2. They called it a weekender. But what I loved about Schaefer's was how honest their slogan was. Like they were like the last company, one of the last companies I felt was like totally honest with their customers. Their actual slogan that they would use on network TV, these are people who give you a 30-pack for $2. Their actual slogan was,
Schaefer is the one beer to have when you're having more than one.
the one beer to have when you are having more than one. I love how honest that is. Like, you want a full body taste? No, we're not your guy. No. You want to forget your name for less than $5? Give us a ring, okay? We're a good company to know. And I want to see that reintroduced, like the honest beer commercial, because we used to be very honest with each other as a country, I feel, and now I feel we lied. I'm going to show two other quick commercials. This next one is a Hams commercial, I think, which starts with the line. It's a little hard to hear. It starts with the line, "My wife says I can only have one."
My wife says I can only have one beer. And this is it.
There's a big beer brotherhood of Hams.
So this guy has gone on a beer run where he has packed his wife in the back of the sedan that is filled with cases of Hams. Like, that's how honest they used to be about how you used their beer. This is an old Milwaukee ad here that was actually a Super Bowl ad, which is kind of cool that old Milwaukee used to be able to afford Super Bowl ads.
Oh, man, you know the rules, Jeb. First man in the water's got to buy the beer. For everybody.
And Jeb, I hope you're better at picking beer than you are log roller.
And Jeb, you better make it a good one. Hey, what happened, Jeb? Get caught in the rain?
When you have to get the beer.
So I don't know if you heard that slogan there. It was, "When you have to get the beer." That was their actual slogan. Could you imagine, like in 2012, if Miller Lite bought a Super Bowl ad that said something like, "Hey, do you hate your drinking buddies? Like, this ain't your daughter's wedding. You're on the hook for the bill? Buy us, we suck." Like, that's how honest they used to be, you know? And they are not honest anymore. Like, you watch a beer commercial now, like, it's a lie. Like, they act like it's a health drink, you know? People no longer gain weight in these commercials. Like, they don't fight in these commercials. Have you ever seen a beer commercial with a designated driver? That is the most unrealistic 30 seconds of TV you have watched. I don't care what else you've watched. You watch Teen Wolf, and I will consider that like a more plausible concept. I will accept a werewolf small forward with 90 rebounds before I will accept the way they portray the designated driver. You know, in these commercials, he's happy to be doing it. His passengers get in the car orderly and thank him. In real life, they pile in there like they're trying to block a field goal. Like, you're doing like 40, to 60 down a major highway when you get a door ajar alarm because your buddy is pissing out of a moving vehicle yelling, "Take me to Taco Bell!" Like, that's what it's really like to drive those idiots around. That's why I'm going to end this thread here with what I consider to be the least realistic drinking commercial I've seen.
Did you hear them with the meeting?
Here, I got mine too. These are for you.
Thanks.
Got room for these?
Is it your birthday?
I just drove a few friends home last night.
Bailey's reminds you, being a designated driver is always appreciated.
Yeah, I just drove a few friends home last night. Think of the friends you drive home. Think of the jackasses that get out of your car. And these are Bailey's drinkers, so maybe they're cut from a higher cloth, but that they're gonna get their like they're gonna wake up on some random couch, like, what? How did we get home last night? Was it Jim? Fellas, we ought to get a bouquet going here. Doesn't that sound nice, you know? It does occur to me that I have no idea where he works or his last name. And that's why I want to see, like, the honest beer commercial reintroduced, because they used to have them. Like, one thing I do when I get really drunk is I get in these arguments over topics that I normally wouldn't have an opinion on. And now I'm screaming about them at the top of my lungs. My old roommate and I, we woke my wife up a couple months ago. This is what Jessica hears out of the living room. My old roommate John yelling, "No, man. No, man. Cats don't fuck. Cats make love." We got in a fist fight over this. Neither one of us has ever owned a cat. We have no idea how they court each other. we're just drunk, and Jessica comes out and she separates us, and she's like, "What the hell happened here?" And John yells back, "This moron you're married to doesn't think cats can fall in love." And he said it with like the confidence that she would walk out on our marriage. Like upon learning this. And I should have kept my mouth shut, but like I never know when to just like be quiet and look maybe, a little bit better. I yell, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. As we all know, cats are only looking for a good time." And I would love to see like a beer commercial that like captures that kind of behavior. We're like two guys getting a fight at a wedding, and they're finally separated by an older woman, and these dudes are just like crying now. And she asks, "What the hell happened here?" And the one guy answers, "I'll tell you what, that SOB doesn't think I can outrun a flamingo." Like Miller time right there. I think that would be an honest beer commercial. I actually saw a commercial for one that was even less realistic than any of these. It was for a hangover cure. I don't know if they have these on late night TV here. It's called The Chaser. Yeah, it's the most hilarious ad you've ever seen. It's on late night TV. You're supposed to take this pill before you go out drinking. You don't get a hangover. It's the funniest ad you'll ever see. It goes, "The Chaser absorbs the toxins that cause a hangover. Developed at a leading drinking institute." What? There's a lab that's not going to split the atom anytime soon. Like, what kind of experiment do you do at a leading drinking institute? Like, well, we've got these lab mice. We're going to inject them with shots of Jaeger. And then we're going to see if they make out with ugly mice. Then it's got this small print on the back. It says, "Effective up to 4 drinks." 4 drinks. If I could stop at 4 drinks, I wouldn't need the fucking pill. Or you know what we call somebody who's had 4 drinks in my family? The driver. You come to one of my parties, you stop yourself at 4 drinks, I assume you're on your way to a job interview. I've had job interviews where I feel I would have been better off showing up straight drunk. I think that's where you really see it when you live every day like it's your last, is how bad your job interview. You're always getting caught in lies, because you're so hungover and running late. I used to always tell myself, well, I'll just lie. What's the worst that could happen? They don't hire me. No, the worst that could happen is they actually hire you based off these lies. And you don't know how to do your job. I got started, I do computer security software, but the way I got started is I had this job interview. I was totally unqualified for it. Opening question was, how do you install a DHCP server? To this day, I have no idea what a DHCP server is or does, but I can't confess that in the opening question, so I think all right, how do I come up with an unverifiable way to answer that question? So I say, well, what do you guys run here? And this is like 1993. He's like, well, we run Windows. I mean, everyone runs Windows. I'm like, oh, man. I only know how to do it on Unix, which I had never used, but I heard about on an NPR report. And his complexion changes. He's like, oh, my God, you won't believe this. We just signed a contract to do Unix development. The problem is we don't know how to verify your answers. Would you mind taking a quick test? And I do the most suspicious response. I go, you know what, man? I got a ride picking me up in 2 minutes. Like, really? You gave yourself 4.5 minutes for this job interview? Your buddy's coming to pick you up in his dad's car? But yeah, I always had terrible job interviews. I nearly killed myself in a job interview. I electrocuted myself unconscious in the middle of a job interview. I electrocuted myself unconscious in the middle of a job interview. It was at this place called the Battery Hut. Whenever I tell this story, I always imagine that logo interviewing me, and I knew nothing about batteries. I'm just lying throughout the whole job interview. But the job is kind of in the bag because the assistant manager recommended me. And I should give some background. When me and my brothers were growing up, we would lick 9-volt batteries. I don't know if anyone else here licks. You get like a silly little charge, you know? Perfectly harmless. And I'm doing this at this job interview, and because she's convinced I'm going to be her next employee, she starts showing me the inventory. And at one point, she pulls out this drawer of boxy unmarked batteries. Now, they all look like 9 volts, but it turns out each and every one of these is a 75-volt garage door opener battery. And she asks, how would you describe your level of battery knowledge? And I answer, lying, expert, or if I may, above. I then pick one of these up. I go, you ever do this? Lick it. Knock myself clean unconscious. You want to see a retail manager panic? Knock yourself unconscious before you've delivered any emergency contact info. Like, retail managers, they don't know what to do when they run out of nickels. I'm now a dead body on the floor, and the only form of ID she has for me is a high school resume that says I once worked at Lady Foot Locker. Like, that's the only thing she knows about me. And I would just always lose jobs, too. I would lose, jobs for all kinds of reasons. I lost one job because I had too bad of a hangover. Well, there were some extenuating circumstances. It was September 11th, the September 11th. And what we sometimes forget about September 11th is, September, we don't forget this, but we're not as aware. September 10th was any other day, so I did what I was always doing back then. I was like out to the bars till like 4 a.m. in Chicago, and I woke up 90 minutes late for work that Tuesday. So I just fly out of the apartment without turning on a single device. So I'm now interfacing with America that went through a tragedy that I know nothing about. I had no idea what was going on. And I take the train down to where my office was, and I used to work right next to DePaul University, and it's being evacuated. And I'm hearing all these weird things, but then somebody says, bomb threat. So I think, this is the old college bomb threat, You never bought the book. You get some pledge in your fraternity to call in a bomb threat before a test. I think that's the only thing that's going on in America. And I get up to my office, and my manager's in mid-speech, and he pulls me in, and he's like, listen, this is a weird day. All the other employees are there. We don't know what's going on. We're just going to shut down the office. Go home, be with your families. We're just going to shut down the office. And I only think it's a bomb threat. So I then go up for the most inappropriate high five that has ever been administrated. I go, yeah. Home by noon, I make an Indian software developer high five me. I look my boss right in the eyes and I just say, I'm just gonna get a haircut. And then I walked out the door with no further communications. So he thinks I just hate my job that much. And I am that terrible of an employee that I am willing to absorb like a modern Pearl Harbor to leave the office. And there was a whole group of jackasses like me walking around that morning. The guy I was out with that Monday night, Pat, had a job interview that morning. And back then he kept his suit at his parents' place, and he wakes up and he flies down to his parents' place, and he comes in, and they go, Pat, we need to talk, obviously about September 11th, which he knows nothing about. In his hungover, paranoid mind, he gets in his head that they know he has a job interview and they want to lecture him about responsibility. So he yells back, listen, I know, okay? I know I'm dealing with it. Now find me a suit. Imagine how that had to sound. Jesus Christ, at the end of the day, as big of a fuck-up as he is, he's a pretty good patriot. He's gonna put his Sunday best on and just try and help people out somehow. And I would even lose jobs, for reasons that should have been a compliment, that should have been flattering. I lost one job because I had too big of a vocabulary. Or at least that's the way I always tell it. CompUSA would probably tell it differently, but I used to work at a CompUSA, and I come in one day, and there's this very upset older woman in the cable aisle, and she brought the wrong kind of monitor cable. She bought an extension cable when she needed a replacement cable. And she just can't figure out the right one. And this associate's trying to help her, and somehow he's not able to communicate what she needs. And she's just worried she's going to buy the wrong one again. So he's like, all right, Sean, you're always good at talking to people. You come over. I'm like, oh, yeah, ma'am, this is simple. You just need a male-female cable. That's all you need, male, female. And she's like, I don't understand how that's different. I'm like, one end's male, one end's female. She's like, I don't understand the difference between the two ends. I'm like, ma'am, male, female. And she goes, I'm not good with computers. I said, ma'am, I want you to get computers out of your head and do simple word association, okay? Male, female. And she says, I'm sorry, you guys, you're just all so young, and I don't understand, and it's so much money, I'm sorry. I'm like, okay, ma'am, okay, ma'am. I want you to look at this one. You see how the pins are erect? That's the male, okay? Now I want you to look at this one. You see how the holes are invaginated? That's female. And as I'm saying that, my manager, who had been wanting to fire me for weeks, walks by. That's it! That's it! And he just takes me and he pulls me to he's like, finally you are out of here. Finally I have an excuse to fire you. He's like, you can't be talking to customers like that. Not only was that condescending, not only did it have like borderline sexual connotations, but on top of everything else, invaginated? That's not a real word. And I'm pretty sure I've made this word up, but I decide like I'm gonna get in one last fight with this guy, and I'm like, oh no, invaginated is most certainly a word. At a denotative level, vagina just means hole. The average human body has 7 to 9 vaginas. I'm talking to you out of a vagina right now. You are hearing me out of 2 vaginas, okay? At the end of the day, most of our work's done through vaginas, Frank. And somehow, in the awkwardness and my confidence, I'm able to convince him that under Ohio employment laws, they're not allowed to fire me if invaginated is a real word. So they have somebody from the warehouse go to Borders to buy a dictionary, which I think is the most hilarious petty cash purchase that ever went on at that computer store. Like, $17, dictionary, purpose, fire Sean Flannery. And once he comes back with the dictionary, I'm like, oh man, I'm pretty sure I made this word up. I'm gonna lose this job. But I figure if it is a word, it's gonna be like some sort of like adverb or something, like, under vagina, and it's not there. He's like, I told you! And now he's like starting to pull out the paperwork. I'm like, well, hold on, maybe it's become like its own separate word. So we go to the E's and it's not there. And he's like, now you got to sign. I'm thinking like, man, I really need this job. It paid a lot for the time, and I'm going to lose it. But then at the last second, I think, I have no instinct for spelling. Maybe it's spelled with an I. Saved right there by the I's. Fired 2 days later for being late for work.
Schaefer is the one beer to have when you're having more than one.
God, I love those ads. And Schaefer's was so cheap, we would have like these wild nights. We had a bachelor party in Vegas. It was a 4th of July weekend. And you could buy we just bought all these cases of Schaefer's and we brought them back to our hotel. And my wallet ended up getting stolen that weekend. You never want that to happen. You never want your wallet to get stolen on a holiday weekend because the banks open up a day later, especially if you've been on a bender the whole time, because it becomes almost impossible to figure out where your drunk purchases ended and the thieves began. Like the drunk version of you uses your credit card very comparably to how a thief would use it. And I just went into Chase and I denied them all. Like, none of them sound like anything I would do. I'm like, no, clearly, like, this thief, you know. But it seemed so suspicious to them that I denied everything. And then I told them that. So anyways, I come back and I have the following voicemail waiting from me from the manager.
Message.
Hi, Mr. Flannery. This is Ted. I'm calling from Chase Bank. I know you talked to Ron this morning, and he said, yeah, well, you weren't sure about some of these purchases and if they were yours or not. And Mr. Flannery, I'm just trying to... Do you have any memory of all of these purchases? For example, there's a $120 charge from a Wilson's Leather.
$120 charge from a Wilson's Leather, which I obviously denied. They found security footage. I drunkenly went into a Wilson's Leather and bought 3 leather fedoras. Like, I'm sure I told my buddies, like, I know what some high rollers need. Hold on. And then went in and bought those. And we would just have, like, nights like that because beer was so cheap back then in Ohio. And we would, half the time, we nearly killed ourselves. My one buddy, a mutual friend of many people here, Dr. Jeff Kastner, he got his doctorate in aeronautical engineering. So he's literally a rocket scientist. And we go out to celebrate that he's got a doctorate. And we go to this bar in Cincinnati. We go there at about 2 p.m. And we end up closing it till like 4 in the morning. And I don't know if anyone else has ever left a bar that they've been at for like 14 straight hours. But it's a very weird experience because like your legs have sort of atrophied. And you're seeing like a whole different ecosystem of animals out now. And you start doing like these calculations, like Jesus Christ, we could have driven to Florida in that time. We spent it at Rumors in Cincinnati, Ohio. But we suddenly perk up because over our right shoulder, we see the brightest street lamp bulb either of us have ever seen. So I turn to him and I say, we got to get that street lamp bulb. Take it back to your place and try and hook it up to something. So he gets on my shoulders and starts unscrewing it. He yells down, he goes, I don't know, man, it's kind of hot. And I yell, of course it's hot, you moron, you need to lick your fingers. This guy just became a rocket scientist and is on top of my shoulders now licking his fingers to unscrew this. Now, what we don't know is the reason why this bulb is so bright and is so big and is so close to the ground is this is a gas street lamp. So once we get the actual bulb off and all the oxygen rushes in, it explodes in fire, singes off his eyebrows, it catches a nearby tree on fire. We do what any, 30-year-old man would do in that situation. I just calmly pushed him into a cab. And I always thought you could do this from movies. Once I get into the cab, I just yell, go, go, go. You cannot do that in real life. You cannot just go in there and go, follow him. They just won't do that in real life. I go, go. He's like, where to? I go, go. He's like, I need an address. I yell, this town's toast. We need to roll. And he yells, address or I mace you. So I go, art museum, art museum. So it's now 3 in the morning and we are heading towards the art museum. My buddy turns to me, he looks sunburned, he has no eyebrows and is missing the top part of his hair. And he says, Cincinnati actually has a beautiful art museum. But yeah, Jeff, I don't think they're gonna be open, And I was so pissed, because when you're younger, you think, when you're young and you're drunk, you don't think anything's your fault, And I'm like, I can't believe that, man! You can't be just having gas street lamps out there with no warning! I ought to sue this town, I'm yelling. You want to know how drunk we were? We forgot that we originally asked to get dropped off in the Gaslight District. Like, that's where the bar we were at is called the Gaslight Cafe. And I still think it's somebody else's fault. And then we're later talking about, in America, they always act like you should just take a drunk guy's keys. Take a drunk guy's keys, don't let him drive, and everything's fine. And that's a good goal, but I have nearly killed myself more walking home drunk. Experimenting with drunk shortcuts and picking things up, And we found a study where it turns out that is right. This is an actuarial scientist who's going to talk about it here.
That I have done research on drunk driving. Drunk driving is extremely dangerous relative to driving sober. So, drunk drivers are 13 times more likely to cause fatal crashes. But what no one has ever really bothered to, I've never heard anyone think about drunk walking, okay? But when you look at the data, you get a different perspective. There are 1,000 pedestrians each year killed walking drunk. We come up with the number that per mile walked, drunk walking is 8 times as dangerous as drunk driving.
It's 8 times more dangerous to walk home drunk than drive home drunk. And the most amazing dynamic of these statistics are, not only is it more dangerous to you, it is more dangerous to your town. In other words, you're more likely to hurt people walking home drunk than driving drunk. And they break these incidents down into, it's about a third each way. They break it into 3 categories. The first category is stumbling into traffic, trying to cross highways. We're just like drunk elk out there. Like a moose in Canada or something, like just drunkenly walking. But my favorite is the bottom category, which is falling asleep on country roads. What a hilarious way to go. Because every drunk just thinks he needs to lay down for 10 seconds, no, I'm just gonna lay down for 10 seconds, bro, then I'll be cool, all right, man? It is like... And it's all men. That's the other interesting thing about this dynamic. It's 100% men. Because what woman is gonna let her friend go to bed on a country road? Like, hey, where's Maureen? Oh, Maureen, last I saw, she was sleeping on Route 45, and I just left. Like, women take care of each other when they get very drunk. Like, if you ever watch, in my business, you see lots of bachelor parties, lots of bachelorette parties, and it's funny when you watch a bachelorette party, if one of their girls is, drunk and obnoxious and annoying all of them, they still, maintain her, make sure she gets home safe, she's part of the group. If one of our buddies starts getting so drunk he annoys us, we just leave him behind. We just go to a different bar and we don't tell Steve. That's what we do. But if you can embrace that, you can have a fun time. My first road trip as a 21-year-old, I went to visit my buddy Tyson in Boston, and I became so obnoxious drinking that they ended up leaving me behind. They're just like, Flannery's running his mouth, he's too much to handle, and they just left me in Boston where I didn't know anyone. And I ended up at this bar where I was drinking with all these old men in silly accents. And long story short, I ended up marching in the Greek parade at age 21 in Boston. I was kicked out after about 5 blocks because I kept yelling the wrong country's name. Never been an expert on world maps.
I'm Schaefer people.
For more than one beer people, there is only one beer. Schaefer, the one beer to have when you're having more than one.
For more than one beer kind of people. I just love how honest that is. I think it would be great if other companies were that honest. It'd be great if Taco Bell had an ad hey, listen, we know we're not really Mexican food, okay? But you're also not pronouncing your vowels at this hour, so why don't we meet each other halfway here? You ever been to Taco Bell after 10 p.m.? That place is a toga party with hot sauce. They could eliminate drinking and driving as a national epidemic if they just put one cop in the Taco Bell parking lot. I don't even think they would need to use a police cruiser. They could put a breathalyzer on the drive-thru menu and just arrest people as they order. I'm gonna get a Nacho Bel Grande.
All right, why don't you just pull over to the side? You just blew a 2.0, Slick. You're going downtown.
I don't even know if you need that much. When I'm drunk, I want a burrito so bad. You could put a sombrero over the police impound lot. I'll drive right in. But this is how I know it would work. We were leaving a wedding, and this is in Northeast Ohio, and nothing was open other than Taco Bell. It's like 10 p.m. We'd all been drinking. Our driver slowed down, but he had been drinking. We pull up to this Taco Bell. This is how badly we want a burrito. There are 5 cop cars trying to block the entrance. With their sirens on, we weave in between them at 5 miles an hour, like we're docking a boat or something like that. And we find out the reason why they're trying to block the entrance is somebody flipped their car in the drive-thru lane. Like somebody was so drunk and wanted a burrito so badly, they took that turn at like 50 miles an hour. You know, like sometimes you're coming off a highway exit ramp and you're going too fast and you're like, whoa, that was close. That's how this person ordered their nachos. And I'm like, well, how long is that gonna take to clean up? So I went in and I just ordered off the cashier because she was still open. And I come walking out and I see an interesting visual. Our driver, Mike, is no longer in the vehicle. And my buddy Tyson is leaning against it and he goes, we got a real problem. And I see a cop knocking on the trunk. He goes, Mike's our driver. He goes, Mike just locked himself in the trunk to try and get out of a DUI. He thinks they need a warrant to open it up. Yeah. Now, bear in mind, they asked him, sir, have you had anything to drink? And they saw him run into the trunk, and he still thinks they need a warrant. I'm like, how are we going to get home? He's got both sets of keys in there. We had to call our parents, you know? I remember when you were growing up, your parents always gave you that same speech. They always said, hey, listen, I don't want you drinking, but if it happens, I just don't want you driving. And I don't want you getting in the car with anyone who's been drinking. If you're in that position, you can always call us. And what did they always add? They always added, we won't be mad. You know? And you never really believed that, right? That they wouldn't be mad? But at the same time, I don't think they ever expected you to phone that favor in at 33. When you haven't lived in the same town in 12 years. Like, yeah, Mama, I am gonna need that ride. No, I'm not at the airport, I'm at a Taco Bell. Better bring the van, we have 10 full-grown men in a Civic somehow. A lot of people, they have a favorite kind of drinking. You know, some people like to drink at ball games, day drinking, trolleys. My favorite kind of drinking is what I call disaster drinking. If there's ever like a blizzard, power outage, I like to go out to the bars at that point in time. But it nearly killed me the first weekend I moved to Chicago. The first weekend I moved to Chicago, they had their worst flash floods in history. And I go out, it's a Monday night, the Bears are playing a preseason game. I'm like, oh man, this town's gonna be happening. Everyone's gonna be out. But every bar was shut down. I couldn't find a single one that was open. They were all shut down for flooding. But I finally found one bar that was open. It was Yaxie's on Diversey Avenue. Which, yeah, anyone who's been to Chicago, this is a great bar. This is a basement bar. It was the least qualified bar to be open. They shut down their kitchen. They had their entire kitchen staff with like 80-gallon garbage like drums picking up water and running it out of the bar like some sort of sinking ship or something like that. I'm about to show you a photo here from the beginning of the night. This is like probably 4 p.m. here. The water was already high enough that people are swimming in it at 4 p.m. Now, the water got higher. It eventually got up past our ankles, to our knees, to our waist. And the greatest thing about Yaxie's, they didn't turn off a single electrical device. They had their jukebox machine on, their popcorn machine on. My buddy is dancing with a girl. He dips her. Her head goes underwater. He pulls her up and he's like, we're all gonna die in here. And I answer, I know, it's great. Because I truly do believe in that ancient, like, Greek concept of the perfect death. You know, die doing what you did in life. You know, like, something sort of heroic about that, like being the last regiment or going down with the ship. Or, in my case, listening to Eddie Money at a basement bar. I think that would have been just the best way to be electrocuted into the afterlife. And I always loved that kind of music as well. You know, if this was the time that I wanted to die in terms of the perfect death, the time that I probably should have died in terms of injuries sustained also involved this kind of rock and roll. My favorite band of all time is Huey Lewis and the News. I love Huey Lewis and the News. And Huey Lewis and the News, their career had reached a point in the mid-1990s where they were doing pharmacy conventions in Cleveland, Ohio. And my buddy Eric turned to me, who was studying to be a pharmacist, and he goes, oh, you know what's weird, man? I'm going to this convention this weekend, and it's open bar. That's pretty cool. What's strange is Huey Lewis and the News are playing it. I'm like, oh, you got to get me there, man. I love Huey Lewis. Like, I got to go. So he found this old guy out of New Jersey that didn't want to go, and I went, like, as his identity. I went as Ed Mitzen in Creative Healthcare Solutions. And this night became so crazy that I always held on to this name badge. It was like the one thing I always had whenever I moved was Ed Mitzen's name badge. And I go and I see Huey Lewis, and it's amazing, and I'm having the best time. And then I end up at this after-hours party by these pharmacists, and they live in like a really nice area of the flats that I hadn't been to. And the guy's got a roof, and I'm like, you know, I'm the only one drinking at this hour, and I yell, let's go up to the roof. And they're like, no, you know, it's not really that kind of roof. You know, we shouldn't do that, you know, but I decide to go up there anyways. And it's so beautiful, like I'm seeing the river and the bridge, and I'm sort of lost in the moment. And what ends up happening is I walk clean off the roof, and I fall 2 stories onto concrete. It's one of those situations where I thought I had a little bit more roof. You know, like sometimes you're coming downstairs and you think you have one more stair and you don't. Like I thought I had one more nice step of roof and I did not. And the craziest thing is this happened within like 10 seconds of me announcing I'm going up to the roof. So the people at the party hear me go, let's go up to the roof. And they're like, no, you know, it's not really that good of an idea. And then they just see me fall through the window. As I'm falling, I'm thinking, man, I hope somebody parked a big van down there, or I am gonna be in a world of pain. I hit the ground, I'm totally discombobulated, I don't know what's going on. For a second, I think I've even died and like almost been reincarnated or something, because I have all these people above me that I don't recognize, but they're all going, Ed, Ed, Ed. And that's when it hits me, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna die from my injuries. I'm like, shit, I'm gonna die, and they think I'm Ed Mitzen. Like, I'm gonna die, and Ed Mitzen's wife's gonna get a call. Like, Ed's dead. Like, oh my God, what happened? Heart attack? Stroke? Like, no, he was hammered and walked off a 2-story building. Like, this is the real Ed Mitzen right there. Let me show you the last photo of me at the party. This is the Ed Mitzen they met. So I sit up. I sit up and I just say, I'm barely a pharmacist. No one calls my wife. And my buddy picks me up, throws me in my own car, and takes off. And I always wondered what that looked like to the other people. Like, they must have been like, Jesus Christ, that New Jersey office parties. Ed Mitson just walked off a 2-story building, told us not to call his wife and that he sucks at pharmacy. And we're in this car and we're driving, and my buddy turns to me, he's like, Jesus, dude, I can't believe you're alive. And I go, I know, you'd think I'd at least be hurt, don't you? Now, I don't know this yet, but I have a back that's broken in 3 places and a shattered heel. And I go, you'd think I'd be hurt. He goes, I thought you were dead. And I say, you know what, actually, I thought I was going to die too. And you want to know what the weirdest thing was? As I was falling, all I heard in my head was Power of Love by Huey Lewis. He starts laughing so hard, he loses control of my car and hits a tree. So I have now, in about 45 seconds, been in 2 major collisions. Like, they don't even get to the chorus of Power of Love in 45 seconds, and I've been in 2 catastrophic accidents. We get out of the car, and we walk back to his place. And I didn't, feel that bad at the time. I go to bed, but I wake up about 6 hours later, and I feel very sore. And that's when I decide to go into the ER. And I don't know if anyone else here has ever gone to the ER when all the drunk injuries come in. But it is the most hilarious place on earth. Because it's like that scene in Beetlejuice where everyone's dead, and they're waiting, like they have nails coming out of their head, and they're just waiting to be routed in the afterlife. And just like that, no one can explain how they got there. Because the guy in front of me, I'll never forget, he's like, well, my cousin Bob got a new round lawnmower, and I had some old boat fuel lying around. And we don't really quite know what happened, but here we are. And even I was that way. Like the lady's like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, well, I saw Huey Lewis in the news last night. And the evening kind of got away from me, and I don't know. I'm hearing I walked off a 2-story building. So, I don't know. You got to patch me up or something. And because I'm calm, she's calm. But then their mood totally changes when they get the x-ray, which was because I walked off the building, I kept walking as I was falling, which meant my vertebrae absorbed all the shock, and I got a compression fracture in my first 3 vertebrae. The doctor, when he got this x-ray, was hilarious. He kept looking at the x-ray in light like this, and then looking at me, then looking, like I'd given him a counterfeit 20 or something like that. And he goes, you literally walked off a roof. You must have made no effort to adjust whatsoever. He said he had never seen this injury in anyone under the age of 95. He brought in a second doctor to look at it, like he had hit like some sort of hole-in-one or something. The other doctor is explaining it to his residents, and the guy goes, this guy walked off a roof, I'm talking Daffy Duck style. Like, that was his medical terminology for how I injured myself. But I think the best visual of the whole weekend was when I went back to work Monday, because I was the youngest guy in the office at that point, and I was real cocky, and they're like, Sean, do you have any plans? I'm like, do I? And I'm like, you fucking losers. I'm going to see Huey Lewis in the news at an open bar. And I love that their next visual of me after I Cadillac it out of the office is me coming in a full torso cast and leg brace on Monday. I think this story sort of accurately summarizes a lot of the day-to-day costs of living every day like it's your last. It's not so much that you're always dying, it's that you always seem to be dying with a fake name. This time I was Ed Mitson in Creative Healthcare Solutions. That opening story where I was driving and I drove off the bridge, at that point in time I was under 21 and I only had my fake ID on me, which said I was Reggie Dunlap, who is the manager from Slapshot. we made these fake IDs. In Ohio, the way, some of you may recall this, in Ohio, the way they kept you from taking a Polaroid of yourself and putting it into an existing 21-year-old's license is they had the seal there. So this is before holograms, and your photo would be missing the seal. So what we did is I used my nose as the scale, and I made a physical seal. Like, that seal is actually taped to my shoulder there. And we're making this, like, we borrow our next door neighbor's Polaroid. We have, like, every light in the house. Like, it's like me and 15 men in my room doing this. And my mom walks in. She's like, where the hell are all the lamps? She's like, what the hell's going on in here? I have a blue background, the state of Ohio seal on my shoulder. And I've never thought quickly on my feet. I go, due to an unusual set of circumstances, we presently cannot check out books at the library. So we are making counterfeit library cards. And she's like, all right, I want these lamps back. And I remember being happy, but like a little bit, like almost disappointed, like, is my mom like that naive? But then as I got older, I realized like she knew exactly what was going on. She just wanted us to learn the hard way. It wouldn't work. Like, I'm sure she went down to like with my dad, like, Brian, you ought to see what these assholes are doing. I'd be mad, but it's the most talented thing our son has ever done. Career D- student wants me to believe he's making library cards up there. Well, it turns out he's an okay artist, you know? And it doesn't work. You forget how when you're in high school, how young looking you are. I remember we went into the liquor store after we made them, and we talked. We all wore ties, and we go into a state liquor store. And we talked the way we thought adults talk. I just looked the guy right in the eyes. I go, evening. Another day, another dollar. And we get thrown out of there. So I turned to my buddies, and my next plan is, this is how dumb we were in the mid-1990s and how little we know about the world. I turned to them like, guys, let's just start going to gay bars. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, don't you understand? Gay people don't know they're gay till they're like 35. So a gay bar, by definition, won't bother IDing. My buddies who are even dumber than me, the lead reaction from my one buddy is he goes, it's bulletproof. So we put on suits. We go to the only gay bar that I know of in Northeast Ohio, which is called the Interbell, which is actually like a few blocks from here. We're wearing suits. My one buddy doesn't even have a suit. He has a white tuxedo from prom. And I go up to the opening line to the bouncer. I go, we're gay businessmen from Kansas City. How are you? Like, that did not work either. Like, oh, come on in. We got gay businessmen from Oklahoma in there. Yeah. But because I ended up surviving all these weird things, and because I was never hurt all that bad, I mean, I was hurt, but I never felt that much pain, I ended up developing the irrational belief that I was indestructible in my late 20s. And it created a sort of tense situation when I was diagnosed with skin cancer. I had 2 tumors removed, one under my lip and one under my ear. And I thought I just had these moles, and I made an appointment with a dermatologist, and I go in, and she, her complexion kind of changes. She tenses up, and she says, actually, I don't think those are moles. I'm going to use a scary word. I think that's cancer, but don't worry, we've caught it in time. We're going to take it out right now. You're going to be fine. We're going to take it out right now. She's not ready for my response, believing I'm indestructible, which was, you know what? This week is no good. Now I got some buddies in town. We're going to be hitting it hard, if you know what I mean. I can't be on any medication. I actually used the phrase, I said, it's a no-go. Talking about cancer, like we got a no-go on our hands here, I think, you know. She's like, all right, well, just make an appointment with my secretary. And I walk out, and there's a line for the secretary, so I just leave. I figure I can make this appointment over the phone. But because I actually believed I was indestructible back then, it totally slipped my mind to make the appointment. Until about 10 days later, when I got the following voicemail.
Have one new voice message. and 2 saved messages. New message.
Hi, Mr. Flannery. This is Jennifer calling from Dr. Ingman's office. I'm calling because we haven't heard from you in a couple weeks. And I just want to reiterate, it is cancer. And it's going to have to come out. So,
have one. New voice.
I love that second part. She goes, it is cancer, and it's going to have to come out. And you can kind of hear, like, the restrained anger in her voice. You're like, really? That's what my job is today? I got to explain to this asshole what cancer is? And that it should be out of his body, not in his body? And the crazy thing is, I was checking that message at a bar where I had a different set of buddies. We had Cubs tickets, and we were drinking at like 2 p.m., and my buddy turns to me. He's like, who's calling you at this hour? And I go, oh, man, I forgot. I have cancer. Yeah, no, in my face. I have cancer. And he was introducing like his then girlfriend, future fiance, now wife, to all his high school drinking buddies for the first time. And he took her aside, and he's like, listen, I just want you to know they're pretty crazy. She's like, well, trust me, my friends were crazy too. But then I guess she later took him aside. I was like, crazy? Crazy? You call that crazy? You have a friend over there that forgot he has cancer. Currently doing Jell-O shots because it's $1 cheaper, all right? I think the wedding at the art museum is off the table now. That's the show, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out.
People who are having fun. Shaker.